In history, some rulers stood out not only for their conquests, but for the sheer discipline and severity of their character. Known as the strictest sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Murad IV remains controversial for his bans, punishments, and unwavering authority. In this journey, we uncover both the truths and the legends. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Murad IV was not just a young ruler who rose to the throne. He embodied fear, discipline, and ultimate authority. His iron grip over the people, the laws, and the army etched his name into history. But what kind of character lay behind this harsh image? Now, scene by scene, we'll explore the life of one of the empire's most formidable rulers. Murad IV was born in Istanbul in 1612. As an heir to the Ottoman throne, his childhood was far from easy. Palace intrigues, the dominance of his mother Sultan, and rivalry among his siblings shaped his character. Even at a young age, he faced matters of state. This intense pressure would later manifest in the severity that became his hallmark as a ruler. The greatest trial for young Murad came when he ascended the throne at an early age. After the murder of his brother, Osman II, and the chaos that followed, the empire was deeply shaken. Murad became sultan at just 12 years old, confronted with internal conflicts. Such a heavy responsibility at a tender age planted the seeds of a personality forged by power and authority. The child sultan's rule was supported by his mother, Sultan. Eunuchs, viziers, and court officials all sought to influence the young sovereign. Yet Murad remained reserved, quietly observing those around him. In an era when authority was constantly questioned, he realized he had to appear strong. This atmosphere prepared the ground for the merciless methods he would later use to secure his authority. Despite his youth, Murad showed remarkable intelligence and memory. He easily remembered what was spoken in the palace and carefully studied the behavior of those around him. Even as a boy, he stood out with his seriousness and discipline. These qualities foreshadowed the ruler he would become: harsh, decisive, and unforgettable in the annals of Ottoman history. Murad's childhood unfolded amid both the splendor of the palace and an atmosphere of distrust and intrigue. Growing up in such an environment laid the foundation for his future reign of severity. With his accession, the Ottoman people witnessed the rise of a ruler who was both young and destined to establish authority through iron will and uncompromising discipline. Murad IV is remembered not only for his severity, but also for the bans he imposed. His prohibition of alcohol and tobacco became legendary. From the palace to coffee houses, inns, and public streets, the ban was enforced with strict discipline. Murad fiercely fought habits he believed disrupted order. These laws made his name both feared and admired among the people of the Ottoman Empire. The Sultan did not merely declare the ban, he personally ensured it was enforced. At night, he disguised himself and walked through Istanbul, catching violators with his own eyes. People began to see him as both a ruler and a shadow, always lurking nearby. Murad IV made his presence felt in the daily lives of even the most ordinary citizens. Punishments for breaking the ban was severe. Those caught smoking had iron rods forced into their mouths, while drinkers faced brutal penalties. Such harsh measures showed Murad's determination, and soon he became both a symbol of justice and of fear. Among the people, a saying spread: "The Sultan's eyes are everywhere," reminding all that no one could escape his authority. The ban was not merely about social order. it was also a way for Murad to stamp his will upon the empire. His goal was to teach discipline through fear and obedience. Over time, these prohibitions grew into legends. Ordinary people began to imagine every stern figure they saw on the street as the Sultan himself, a living embodiment of authority. The alcohol and tobacco ban was more than a ruling. It was the reflection of Murad IV's vision of power. He sought to discipline society, enforce absolute authority, and restore order to the empire. This ban became one of the defining marks of his reign, remembered as a symbol of severity and the uncompromising nature of his rule in Ottoman history. Murad IV's reign was remembered not only for bans but also for the harsh laws he enforced. His sense of justice relied less on mercy and more on punishment. Even minor crimes received heavy sentences. Theft, corruption, and disobedience were unforgivable. Through his strict laws, Murad sought to rebuild state authority and never hesitated to use ruthless methods to achieve this goal. The Sultan did not limit punishments to decrees. He personally attended proceedings and observed how sentences were carried out. For him, justice was not just a written rule. It was a power displayed in front of everyone. Public punishments became a spectacle that reinforced fear, but also instilled discipline, making society both wary of and obedient to his authority. Murad's punishments were not merely about discipline. They were intended as warnings. Even small mistakes could lead to death. Such measures revealed the extreme boundaries of his justice. His harshness affected not only criminals, but also officials around him. In his presence, no one dared to make the slightest error, knowing that even hesitation could result in dire consequences. Through punishments, Murad inspired both fear and admiration. Under his rule, Ottoman streets grew quieter and people behaved more cautiously. Citizens felt not only the weight of the laws, but also the piercing gaze of the Sultan himself. Order was restored, but at the cost of a constant tension hovering over daily life within the empire. The severity of the punishments became inseparable from Murad's character. To ensure his authority was never challenged, he relied on mercilessness. While his methods restored order in the empire, they left deep scars among the people. At the mere mention of his name, citizens trembled, accepting his authority as an undeniable and ever-present force. Murad IV's harsh laws and punishments made him one of the most disciplined rulers in Ottoman history. Together with his bans, they provided the empire with a temporary stability. Yet, this stability rested on suppressed freedoms and obedience born of fear. His legacy remains debated to this day. Was it true justice, or was it tyranny cloaked in the name of order? Murad IV's severity extended not only to his subjects but also to his own family. In Ottoman tradition, fratricide was a brutal method used to preserve the state. Murad continued this practice. To secure his throne, he ignored even the closest blood ties. This strengthened his absolute rule, but also transformed him into a symbol of fear within the empire and beyond. For Murad, eliminating his brothers was not only about security, it was a way of solidifying his authority. These acts spread as whispers among the people. Some called him cruel, while others argued that the Ottoman throne left no alternative. His name came to represent a ruler remembered not for mercy, but for necessity, standing as a cold figure of power and survival. Under Murad's reign, The palace dazzled with its magnificence. Yet behind this grandeur lay blood and sorrow. Murad used the splendor of the palace as a reflection of his power. Every detail of the throne room reminded courtiers of his dominance. The brilliance of the court was not merely beauty. It was a veil concealing severity, discipline, and unrelenting authority. Discipline reigned in Murad's palace as much as magnificence. Even the smallest mistake carried grave consequences. The grandeur of the setting itself was an instrument of pressure. Guests chose their words carefully under his gaze, and palace officials acted with constant caution. Splendor and fear coexisted side by side, creating an atmosphere of awe mixed with silent tension. Fratricide and the splendor of the palace summed up Murad's understanding of power. A ruler who disregarded even family ties, he cemented his authority with both fear and magnificence. In his era, the Ottoman Empire was known for strict discipline within, and for its dazzling palace without. Yet beneath that magnificence, the shadow of ruthless reality was always present and felt. Murad IV's severity extended deeply into his army. Under his reign, Ottoman soldiers became known for their discipline. The Sultan tolerated no act of disobedience, punishing even the smallest mistake. The army reflected the fear and order he imposed across the empire. For Murad, a strong army was not only a tool of conquest, but the ultimate guarantee of his authority. The Sultan demanded discipline from his soldiers not only in battle, but in daily life. The ban on alcohol was enforced with strict attention within the army as well. Orders were followed without question. In this way, Murad's army became more than a military force. It became an extension of his personality. Silent, obedient, and always ready to strike when commanded. To maintain discipline, Murad used harsh punishments on his soldiers. Disobedience or neglect of duty was met with the heaviest penalties. These methods soon made the Ottoman army one of the most feared forces of its time. Yet such strict discipline also created an atmosphere of tension, as soldiers lived under the constant shadow of the Sultan's uncompromising authority. Murad's army inspired admiration even in Europe. Under his command, Ottoman soldiers were remembered for their discipline, both in times of war and peace. His personal severity echoed within the ranks, turning the army into one of the strongest symbols of Ottoman power. Through fear and order, Murad built a military force that left a lasting impression across continents. For Murad IV, the army was more than a show of strength. It was the stage for his ideals. Discipline, fear, and obedience formed the pillars of his forces. This structure not only brought victories to the Ottoman Empire, but also etched Murad's name into history as the Sultan of Discipline, a ruler whose army embodied his relentless authority. One of the most decisive moments of Murad IV's reign was the Baghdad Campaign. The long-standing conflict between the Ottomans and the Safavids had become unavoidable. For Murad, this campaign was not merely a war, but a demonstration of Ottoman power. Preparations were carried out with utmost care, and the Sultan's determination echoed through the entire army, instilling both fear and resolve. A vast logistical system was established for the campaign. The road from Istanbul to Baghdad was arduous and dangerous. Supplies, weapons, and accommodations were planned in meticulous detail. Murad personally supervised the preparations. To him, this march was not only a military endeavor, but also a test of Ottoman discipline and strength, a stage where his authority would be proven. Before setting out, Murad delivered clear orders to his troops. Discipline and obedience were non-negotiable. Even the smallest failure would be met with harsh punishment. This stance created both fear and admiration among the soldiers. To his men, the Sultan was not only a commander, but also the embodiment of absolute authority, a presence they could not escape. Preparations were not limited to military arrangements. Murad emphasized the campaign's spiritual significance as well. He presented the war as a sacred duty. Soldiers began to see the march not only as a struggle for land, but as a mission fused with faith. Discipline and belief now walked hand in hand, strengthening the determination of the Ottoman army. In the palace, a wave of activity surrounded the campaign. Envoys, viziers, and commanders gathered for constant meetings. Every decision passed through Murad's approval. No step was taken without his word. His absolute control showed that he was not only the leader, but also the very spirit of the campaign, shaping its course with his uncompromising will. When preparations for the Baghdad campaign were complete, the Ottoman army stood as one of the most disciplined and powerful forces in history. Murad sent a clear message to both his troops and his enemies. Ottoman might would rise again. This march was not only about victory, but also about showcasing the grandeur and unshakable authority of the empire. The hostility between the Ottomans and the Safavids was rooted in centuries of political and religious tension. Their rivalry was not only about land, but also about sectarian dominance. With this campaign, Murad IV aimed to strengthen Ottoman power in the east and break Safavid resistance. The clash was more than a battle. It was the opening of a decisive historical confrontation. When the Safavids learned of the Ottoman army's approach, they began their preparations. Yet internal strife and disorganized leadership weakened them. In contrast, the Ottomans advanced with discipline and strength. Murad sought to defeat his enemy not only with sheer military power, but also with careful strategy. Both empires were being drawn into an inevitable and decisive confrontation on the battlefield. The battles quickly revealed Ottoman superiority. Their disciplined advance forced the Safavid forces to retreat. Murad personally oversaw the battlefield, commanding with an iron will. His presence became a source of courage for his soldiers and a symbol of fear for his enemies. Through determination and order, the Ottomans gained the upper hand and shaped the course of the conflict. The Ottoman-Safavid conflict was more than a military struggle. It was the stage for ideological and religious rivalry between two empires. Murad portrayed the war as a demonstration of power, aiming to solidify the Ottomans' leadership in the Islamic world. For the Safavids, it was a desperate fight for survival. This clash became a turning point that would define both empires' futures. As the Safavids retreated, they lost valuable territory. Murad sought not only a military victory, but also the foundations of lasting dominance. Yet his methods rested on fear and submission rather than diplomacy. This approach made Ottoman superiority unquestionable, establishing the empire as the dominant force in the east and reshaping the balance of power in the region. The Ottoman-Safavid clashes once again revealed Murad's severity. He was not only a sultan, but also a warrior who led from the front. Victorious in battle, the Ottomans secured dominance in the east. This triumph became a prelude to the Great Baghdad Campaign, where Murad would further prove himself as both a commander and a ruthless symbol of imperial might. In 1638, the Ottoman army marched toward Baghdad under the command of Murad IV. Harsh terrain, difficult climate, and long distances tested the soldiers. Yet Murad's strict leadership kept order intact. His determination became the greatest strength of the Ottoman army. This campaign would not only be a conquest, but also a turning point, etching Ottoman power firmly into history. Throughout the march, the army faced hunger and disease. Still, Murad's rigid rules managed to maintain morale. Under his authority, the army pushed forward despite hardships. The Sultan shared meals with his soldiers, setting an example of unity and resilience. This gesture created loyalty and strengthened the bond between ruler and army in the face of immense challenges. When the Ottomans reached Baghdad, they surrounded the city with strict discipline. Murad himself stood at the battlefield, issuing orders directly. His presence gave courage to the Ottomans and struck fear into the Safavids. The siege lasted for days, but the determination and order of the Ottoman troops gradually opened the gates to victory and undeniable dominance. The clashes intensified, yet the disciplined advance of the Ottomans broke Safavid resistance. Murad stood fearlessly at the front, inspiring his men with bold leadership. His courage became one of the most crucial elements of victory. As the Safavid army retreated, the Ottomans declared triumph. This moment marked the peak of Murad's military power and the height of his reign. At the end of the Baghdad campaign, the Ottomans achieved a decisive victory. In 1638, the Treaty of Zuhab, also known as the Treaty of Kasri-Shirin, was signed, defining the borders between the Ottomans and the Safavids. Remarkably, these borders remained for centuries. Murad had not only conquered a city, but had secured lasting dominance in the east. The Baghdad campaign became the pinnacle of Murad IV's rule. He was remembered not only for his bans and severity, but also for his great victories. This triumph demonstrated Ottoman power to the world. Yet behind the grandeur of victory, Murad's harsh character still cast its shadow, making his name forever linked to both glory and fear in history. After the victory in Baghdad, the burdens on Murad IV grew heavier. Known for his severity and authority, the Sultan now faced the trial of his own body. Long campaigns, strict discipline, and constant stress weakened his health. Excessive drinking over the years took its toll, damaging his body. His iron will was no longer enough to stop the collapse within. In the final years of his life, Murad grew increasingly withdrawn. Illnesses struck both his body and his spirit. Even within the palace, his once powerful stride was replaced by slower, labored steps. Yet despite his condition, the Sultan never surrendered his authority. Though those in the palace saw his weakness, the shadow of fear he cast remained firmly intact. As Murad's health declined, his temper erupted with even greater intensity. The Sultan who banned alcohol was himself consumed by the same weakness. A contradiction whispered among the people. Behind the image of victories lay an inner struggle. This paradox revealed one of the most human yet tragic sides of Murad's reign: his inability to conquer his own destructive habits. In his final years, Murad's ailments became unbearable. Despite his youth, his body collapsed under the strain. He tried to uphold the empire forged by his severity. but his failing health cast a shadow over his throne. The Sultan now fought not only against his enemies, but against the decay within. A battle that would ultimately bring his rule to an end. In 1640, while still in his early 30s, Murad IV's life came to an end. Illness, heavy drinking, and years of physical strain cut his reign short. For the Ottoman people, his death brought both shock and sorrow. Known for his severity, the sudden passing of the Sultan left a lasting mark. A ruler remembered as both feared and, paradoxically, longed for. Murad's death created a deep void within the Ottoman court. The empire, once disciplined under his iron hand, suddenly faced a new chapter. He left behind a legacy built on discipline, yet marked by fear. Those who followed struggled to establish the same authority. His passing forced the throne to reset its balance, reshaping the fragile structure of Ottoman power. After his death, Murad IV was remembered by his people with both fear and nostalgia. His bans, punishments, and severity earned him hatred. Yet his ability to impose order also won reluctant respect. His death gave Ottoman history both a dramatic ending and an unforgettable legacy. Murad lived on in memory, a ruler whose sternness became legend across centuries. Murad IV's harshness remains a matter of debate among historians. Some portray him as a ruler who used brutal methods to preserve justice, while others see him as a symbol of tyranny. His name was etched in memory as both the restorer of order and the spreader of fear. In Murad's character, truth and legend became inseparably intertwined across the centuries. Stories passed among the people exaggerated Murad's severity. Tales claimed he roamed the streets in disguise, punishing lawbreakers on the spot. These accounts made his shadow feel present in every corner of the city. Over time, the line between what he truly did and what was told blurred, transforming Murad from a sultan into a larger-than-life figure of myth. Some sources claim that Murad did not fully obey his own bans. While he outlawed alcohol, rumors spread of him drinking in secret gatherings. These contradictions fueled controversy around his stern image. For historians, they created questions. For the people, they humanized him, while at the same time elevating him into legend, both fallible and extraordinary in the same breath. This blur between truth and myth gave Murad IV a unique legacy. He became remembered as the strictest sultan of Ottoman history. Yet the tales surrounding him portrayed not just a ruler, but a legendary hero-like figure. His name endured not only in historical records, but also in the imagination of the people, where he lived on as both man and myth. Murad IV's character was shaped by the pressures he faced from childhood. Palace intrigues, his early accession to the throne, and constant threats turned him into a harsh personality. For him, power was the only way to survive. He never allowed his authority to be questioned. Murad became a ruler who treated both his family and his empire with iron discipline. At the core of his character was discipline. He ruled his army, his people, and his palace with this principle. He had no tolerance for even the smallest mistake. Murad believed order could only be achieved through fear. While this approach strengthened the empire, it also etched his image as a ruthless figure in people's minds. Discipline defined his name. Anger was one of the most prominent traits of his character. Even minor mistakes drew harsh reactions, with punishments spreading fear. His anger was not merely a weakness but also a tool of governance. Citizens and statesmen trembled when speaking in his presence. This fury reinforced his authority, but also painted him as a ruler without compassion or forgiveness. Contradictions also marked Murad's personality. Though he imposed strict bans, he often succumbed to his own vices, exposing his weakness. This made him appear both human and hypocritical in the eyes of the people. Yet even these contradictions did not break his authority. Instead, they added complexity, making Murad's story more compelling and his rule more enigmatic to history. Ultimately, Murad IV's character left a permanent imprint on officers involved. Harshness, discipline, and anger combined. His name was remembered not only for conquests, but also for the strength of his personality. People recalled him with fear, yet also with respect for his leadership. His character became legendary, leaving an enduring mark on the throne and the memory of the empire.
Murad IV's legacy remains one of the most debated chapters in Ottoman history. His severity, bans, and punishments made him both feared and respected. During his reign, order was restored, but the cost was heavy. Today, his name is still associated with discipline, fear, and power, reminding us of the sharp edge of authority that defined his rule and memory. The story of Murad continued to be discussed throughout history. Some saw him as a symbol of justice, while others condemned him as the embodiment of cruelty. Yet one truth united all. Murad IV was among the most powerful sultans to mark the Ottoman throne. His legacy still reflects the stern and uncompromising face of authority, even in modern reflections. Murad IV's life shows us how power and severity leave lasting marks throughout history. In his story, legend and reality are inseparably woven together. If you want to continue this journey with us, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. In upcoming episodes, we will uncover both the real and legendary sides of new figures.